So a few months ago, I did a Sega Saturn tutorial on this channel. And at the time, I knew that it wasn't exactly really good emulation. Unfortunately, the Sega Saturn scene has been languishing for over a decade now with not much in the way of progress. However, recently, all that has changed. Hi, my name is Brad, and today on Unbroken Software Studio Tutorials, I'll show you the new and updated tutorial for getting the Sega Saturn to run on your computer with great emulation, with great sound, and without having to mount your discs any longer. So first, let's go ahead and import our Sega Saturn games into LaunchBox. I have my Sega Saturn games here, and you'll notice that they all have a cue sheet attached to them. And for the most part, you need these cue sheets. The game will not run if you don't have a cue sheet, and you can create a cue sheet for your games if they don't have one. And I've covered that in the forums, actually. All a cue sheet is saying where the file is, like what the file name is. You can put a path in here, but if you just leave it the name .iso, it'll look in the folder that it's in. And I created these with the program ISObuster. So I essentially created an ISO file, and then I used ISObuster to create the cue sheet, and then just labeled it cdq and cd.iso, and it put all the information in there that you need. For the most part, though, the games that you find should come with them, and if you are ripping your games from a Sega Saturn disc, make sure to just do the ripping process. That would also output a cue sheet for you as well. So let's go to Tools, Import, ROM Files. Next, Add Files. We're going to navigate to where we have our Sega Saturn games. Now, they're all individually in a folder, which is fine. So we're going to go to the Search ROMs section here on the top right. We're going to put *.cue. It's going to list every cue sheet for all of our games. We're going to click on a cue sheet, Control A to highlight them all, and click Open. Then we're going to click Next, and then the platform for imported ROMs. This is going to be the Sega Saturn right here. Next. Now, it should pop up blank for your emulator here, but go ahead and either choose Retroarch from the list if you followed any of the tutorials previously, or go ahead and click the Add button. You're going to want to go ahead and download a Retroarch, which you can click this link here. It'll take you to this website here. On the left, I personally use the nightlies as I keep up with all of the updates as they come, and you probably should too. And to be fair, the nightlies are usually never that broken, so that's good. Since LaunchBox is Windows only, we're only going to be dealing with Windows, so go ahead and click Windows. And then, of course, you should know what version of Windows you have. If you have a 32-bit version of Windows, go ahead and go into the x86 folder. If you have a 64-bit version of Windows, go ahead and go into the x86_64. That's what I have, is a 64-bit version of Windows. At the very bottom, you'll see here Retroarch.7zip. This is a complete package of Retroarch. These like top four, for example, only contain the EXEs that have been updated, because you can update everything in Retroarch from the online updater except for the EXEs. Those have to be downloaded from the website. If you've never downloaded Retroarch before, or you want to make sure that you have a full, complete, new, and updated Retroarch, go ahead and just download the file here at the bottom, Retroarch.7zip, and you'll know that it's the biggest file size here. I downloaded it to my Retroarch folder, and I named it 9/15/16 to denote that the date it was built, not the date that I downloaded it, to denote the date it was built, which on the website just says 9/15. So I put 9/15/16 in the file. I right-clicked, extracted to Retroarch 9/15/16, and went to the 9/6/16 folder, which was the previous build I was using. I highlighted my system folder, my config folder, my cores folder, and my retroarch.cfg file. I controlled seed, and I copied them to the 9.15.16 folder. So not only am I using the latest updated version of RetroArch, I have all my custom configs, my generalized configs, and my BIOS files all carried over into the new install. Once you have your RetroArch set up, go ahead and click Browse, navigate to the exe, double click on it, and it should fill in the emulator application path here. Under the associated platforms tab, Sega Saturn may be here. I don't quite remember it if it is. I don't remember if it's one of our defaults. I kind of don't remember it being a default. But if it is, it's more than likely using the Yabause core and not the Mednafin Saturn core. If it isn't here, go to the bottom and double click an empty spot here and type in Sega Saturn. The name is based on the name that we chose a few screens back in the import process, the default name. If you did change the name to something else, make sure that you put that name in the associated platforms column. Those two names have to match. If the line already exists, or you are just adding it, go ahead and double click in this section here, the default command line parameters area. Where it says yabause.dll, if it says yabause.dll, go ahead and type in mednafin_saturn_libretro.dll. Make sure that those are in the parentheses. If you are adding the line for the first time, make sure that you add the -L, quotations, cores, /mednafin_saturn_libretro.dll, end quotations, and make sure that you check the default emulator box there. Once this line is added exactly the way that I have it, go ahead and click OK. The RetroArch name should pop in here. Go ahead and click Next. Use the files in their current location. You cannot choose, copy, or move the files to the LaunchBox Games folder because it will only move or copy the cue sheets and not the ISO or bin files. And you kind of need the other files in the folder. The game will not run with just the cue sheet. The cue sheet just tells the emulator some information, but all of the data is loaded from the ISO or bin files, so do keep that in mind. So use the files in their current location. We're just going to scrape the LaunchBox Games database. Next, and I'm going to select all of the checkboxes here. I'm going to leave them all checked. Next, it's going to log me in to Emu Movies. I'm going to leave everything checked to download all of the possible video, music, manual, and image files. And remember, I am downloading video files because I have an Emu Movies Premium and a LaunchBox Premium account. So if you would like video, make sure to purchase those if that is something that you want for all your systems. Then next, on this screen here, we're going to want to make sure to check use folder names instead of ROM file names. Now, you remember saying that I had cd.q sheets. Those aren't the names of any games. So we want to make sure that we check the box to use the folder names instead of the file names. So we're going to go ahead and click Next. It's going to parse all of our games, and you're going to see here that it's using all of the proper naming conventions instead of the CD. And if a name is off in this list here, go ahead and double click the section here under name to go ahead and rename it if you need to, or go ahead and click on a game and press delete if you would rather not import it at this time. Once everything is set up and ready to go ahead and click finish. It'll go ahead and parse the LaunchBox Games database and Emu Movies and download all of the relevant metadata and images that it can find. Once it is downloaded and LaunchBox has cached all your images, which you'll know is done if you scroll through and no images are popping in. There is one more step that we need to take, and that is that we need to put the BIOS files for the Saturn system in our RetroArch system folder. So the two BIOS files that RetroArch is looking for is Sega_101.bin and MPR-17933.bin. Now, these are technically Mednafin BIOS, but for example, I have a BIOS file just called SS-BIOS version 101. I attempted to just rename this BIOS file to Sega_101, and I recall it working. But the MPR file I didn't have, and I had to go searching for it. I'm not going to give you guys links or anything like that in the description below for BIOS files, so you're going to have to use Google on your own. Google is your best friend. Just search in Sega Saturn BIOS or Mednafin Saturn BIOS, and you're good to go. Go ahead and press Control-C on these two files, however, and in your Retroarch folder is a system folder. Inside, go ahead and paste the two BIOS files in here, and we're good to go. Go ahead and right-click a game and go to Open Retroarch. So your Retroarch background color may look a little bit different if you are using the default. I went ahead and changed mine to black because I like the way it looks. But let's go down to the online updater, and we're going to press X on our keyboard. Right here with Core Updater, go ahead and press X again. Now there are two cores here, Sega Saturn Mednafin Saturn and Sega Saturn Yaba-use. Now I did the tutorial previously on Yaba-use, but it's not quite up to par. The emulation is rather poor. Now, a lot of people in the comments were a little upset that I didn't choose SSF, and I thought I explained it sufficiently enough in the tutorial at the time, but essentially I didn't want to use it because using it is actually a complete pain in the butt. You have to mount games, you have to use BAT files, you have to go through a lot of steps just to get the games to launch through LaunchBox, and that kind of flies in the face of our philosophy of things being easy to use. Now, I do recognize that SSF is a technically superior emulator to Yaba-use. However, I still claim that Yaba-use over SSF is the desired choice if there's a couple of games that you want to play and they work in Yaba-use and you just want to just play your games and not have to deal with BAT files and complicated steps. However, this time around, Mednafin Saturn changes all of that. So go ahead and press X on this core here. It will download and extract it, and we are more or less ready to go. So now it should just boot a game with Retroarch. So I've got a stall here. And there we go. It is booting. Now, every once in a while when you load a game, it's going to take you to this set language screen here, and then the date and time screen. You can go ahead and set this if you want or skip it. Now, once you've set it for this game, it shouldn't ask you to set it for this game. I've set it for other games, and so I've like I set it for Astall, but now see Clockwork Knight here is asking it for me. It just depends. Some games will, some games won't. And then it's also worth noting that this is the load up screen. It'll just go straight to here if it doesn't need you to set the time or the date. And then every once in a while, it will come to this screen. Now, this means that the game didn't work. This does mean that your game disk is a bad rip. Either the cue sheet is wrong or the ISO or the bin file is wrong. So either re-ripping more properly or finding a different download of the game will usually fix this problem. And I note that because I have a stall here. And ironically, this is the one that I created the cue sheet for using ISObuster. Clockwork Knight had its own cue sheet with it. So now I could probably go in and edit that cue sheet or try and fix it up, but I just wanted to show you what it looked like when a game doesn't work. When it goes to that Sega splash screen, that's how you know the game worked, and here we are, we're loading into the game. And it's worth noting that the controller that I have is a PS4 controller. It's automatically assigned to the proper buttons. Things may be a little bit different than you're used to, like jumping for whatever reason is L1 in this game for me. You can go in and change the buttons if you would like, but I would just leave them as at default. Retroarch does a really good job of assigning the buttons on a controller that it's emulating to the controller that you're using. So if you're using a 360, an Xbox One, a PS3, or a PS4 controller, it should automatically just get assigned the proper controls. If you are using a different controller that it doesn't necessarily recognize, you may have to assign them yourself. But there we go. Look, the game's running at either a perfect frame rate or a more than acceptable frame rate. The audio was not clipping It sounds good. This is Saturn emulation, everybody. It's working. I'm so happy. Saturn emulation doesn't suck anymore. Yes. So there we go. That is how you get the Saturn games imported into your LaunchBox install. That's how you download Retroarch. That's how you set the core. That's how you download the core. And that is the BIOS that you need to have named specifically in your system folder. My name is Brad. If you liked the sound of my voice, the link to my channel will be in the description below. I do lots of gaming content over there, so if that sounds like your cup of tea, I would appreciate a subscribe over there. And if this tutorial helped you out at all, then please leave us a thumbs up and subscribe for more videos and tutorials in the future. If I didn't go over anything in enough detail, or I kind of glossed over something a little bit, then I am more than happy to answer your questions in the comment section below. Jason and myself love helping everybody out. So if you have questions on the tutorial today or LaunchBox, we are more than happy to help you out. Remember, Freaks and Geeks, to play more games, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day.